Hey everyone, welcome to Startup Talks. Today we're looking at a startup called Quincy. Quincy made women's clothing that actually fit. This turned out to be harder than it sounds. So, I should say up front, I hadn't read this case before we started. We're going through it together, which means we're equally surprised by everything. That's intentional.
I appreciate that. Let's hear it.
Quincy's idea was simple. Women's clothing, as a general rule, does not fit well. Off-the-rack sizing assumes a body shape that most people don't have. Online shopping makes it worse. You can't try anything on, so you order 3 sizes, keep one, return the other 2. It's a mess.
And augmented reality was supposed to fix this. Virtual fitting rooms, it still doesn't really work.
Doesn't work at all. So Quincy said, what if we do the thing that men's tailoring figured out a long time ago? You take measurements, you cut the clothes to fit the actual body. But instead of going to a tailor, you just enter your measurements when you order online. A few extra fields at checkout. Done.
That's a small behavior change for the customer, which is good. You're not asking anyone to do something radically different.
Right. And they were focused. Their target was young professional women. Not all women, not the mass market. A specific segment with money, with reasons to care about how they look at work, and with willingness to pay more for something that actually fits.
Premium pricing is much easier to justify in categories where appearance signals something: career, status, identity. If it fits you perfectly, it's not just clothes. It's a statement.
Exactly. And the founders ran it lean. Small tests, early MVPs, iteration. By all accounts, a methodologically correct, early-stage startup. Investors believed them. Everything looked right on paper. I want to spend a moment on why this was a genuinely attractive idea, because it matters for understanding what went wrong. The problem is real. Clothing fit is one of those pains that affects almost every woman shopping online, and the existing solutions, free returns, virtual try-ons, don't actually solve it.
And there's a social dimension to it that makes premium pricing completely natural. If you can say, this was cut to my measurements, that's not the same as buying something off a rack. It's a different product category in the customer's mind.
No price ceiling on that either. Fashion, luxury, anything ego-driven. People will pay far beyond what's rational if the identity signal is strong enough. For young professional women specifically, looking right at work is tied to the entire narrative of their career. That's a very motivated buyer.
So the segment, the pain, the premium rationale, all solid.
All solid, which is why it's interesting to look at what happened next. Okay, so it wasn't one thing, it was 4 things, all at once. First, customers had to measure themselves and trust a system they'd never used. That's a small ask, but it's not zero. If the benefit isn't obvious before the first order, a lot of people just won't do it.
And the benefit only becomes obvious after you've worn something that actually fits. So there's a trust gap before the first purchase that you have to cross somehow.
Second, and this one is more structural, Quincy couldn't outsource production to cheap factories. Every item is different because every customer is different. You can't batch produce custom measurements. So they needed their own manufacturing operation, their own supplier relationships, their own knowledge of fabrics and construction.
Which is a completely different business from running an e-commerce site.
And the founders didn't have that background. They had the idea and the customer insight, but not the production expertise. I came across a post-mortem from a woman who tried to launch a clothing brand and said the thing that nearly sank her was fabric sourcing. She'd been buying low-quality materials for months and didn't know enough to realize it. In apparel, that domain knowledge is not optional.
So you need someone on the team who has actually made clothes before, not someone who's going to figure it out.
Third, marketing. Quincy was operating before Instagram and TikTok existed. To reach young professional women, you use traditional channels: radio, magazines, TV, expensive, imprecise, and completely wrong for a niche e-commerce product. Customer acquisition cost, the amount you spend to get one paying customer, ended up too high relative to what you make on each order.
That's a unit economics problem. Unit economics just means, does one customer make you more money than it costs to get them? If not, you lose money on every sale, and selling more just makes it worse.
Exactly. And fourth, the investors. Quincy raised an initial round, but they needed what's called bridge funding, basically a second injection of capital to get from "this works at small scale" to "this works at real scale." Their early investors weren't willing to provide it. The risk looked too high, so when they needed the money most, it wasn't there.
And the result is marketing, production, and operations all burning cash at the same time, with revenue not yet large enough to cover any of it.
Here's the part that I think is the most important. Quincy wasn't creating a new market. Their customers were already buying clothes. They were going to stores, using fitting rooms, ordering online, and returning things. They'd already found ways to live with the problem.
So Quincy was asking existing buyers to switch to a different solution, not inventing new demand.
Right. In strategy terms, that's called a red ocean. You're in a crowded market competing for existing customers, not creating new ones. And that's a much harder place to operate. You're not just competing against other custom fit startups. You're competing against every store, every online retailer, every free returns policy, all of it.
And to win in that environment, you need to be dramatically better, not just a little better, because a little better doesn't overcome the friction of switching.
And dramatically better costs money. You need marketing to explain your differentiation. You need operations that can match established competitors. You need a price that covers all of that and still makes the math work. Quincy had the differentiation, the fit, but not the operational efficiency or the capital to sustain the marketing.
It's a circle. You need revenue to fund marketing, you need marketing to get revenue, and you need capital to keep going while the circle gets moving.
And when the capital runs out before the circle closes, that's the end. So, what was the real cause? I've been thinking about it three ways. 1. The unit economics were broken from the start, and they didn't catch it. 2. The founders didn't have the right team to operate in this industry. 3. Too many hard problems arrived at the same time, and they couldn't handle all of them at once.
Honestly, the third one. Problems don't come alone. Each of those things individually, bad unit economics, wrong team, expensive marketing, underfunding, is survivable. All four together in a competitive market with a limited runway is not.
I think that's right. But I'd add that unit economics deserves special attention. If the math was broken from day one, if the cost structure made profitability impossible at any realistic scale, then everything else follows from that. The investors who didn't bridge, the runway that ran out, the marketing that was too expensive, all of it flows from a model that didn't close.
And the thing about unit economics is that they're not fixed. You can recalculate them, you can change your prices, change your segment, change what you include in the product, but you need someone who actually knows how to read them. Return rates, cost of goods, customer acquisition, logistics, these are specific numbers with specific benchmarks in e-commerce. If nobody on your team has done this before, you're flying blind.
Which brings me to the last thing I want to talk about. There's a principle everyone in startups repeats. Hire people smarter than you. Bring in people who can carry the business even when you're not in the room. Almost nobody actually does this.
Because it's genuinely hard and slightly uncomfortable.
What actually happens is the founder hires someone, explains the entire job to them, and ends up with an assistant. someone who executes what the founder tells them, rather than someone who brings knowledge the founder doesn't have. You hire at level 2.5 when you needed a 3.5.
And then that person hires at 2, and it cascades down. The whole organization gets weaker as you go further from the founder.
And the reason is partly ego, partly practical difficulty. A players are expensive and often not interested in pre-revenue startups. But mostly, it's that founders don't fully know what they don't know. If you've never worked in fashion, you can't tell the difference between a candidate who sounds like they know fabrics and a candidate who actually knows fabrics. So you hire the one who sounds right.
Especially in Europe, where equity structures and salary expectations make it harder to attract senior operators into early stage companies. So you compromise. And the compromise compounds.
The thing I take from this, every new company runs at roughly half the efficiency of an established competitor. Your processes are slower, your costs are higher, your mistakes are more expensive. For your differentiation to work, it has to be worth more than twice the value of all that inefficiency. The only way to close that gap faster is with people who've already solved these problems somewhere else.
Not people who are excited to learn. People who already know.
That's all for today. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of Startup Talks.